Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm GC Smith, and welcome to day 6 of the Battle for Zendikar spoiler season. So you know that saying, the age-old saying, that the truth hurts? Well, our first card today is a literal card version of that saying, Painful Truths. 2 and a black for rare sorcery with Converge. Draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of colours of mana spent to cast Painful Truths. Quite frankly, I like this card so much, simply for cube playability. I like the idea of putting a draw spell in a cube, which encourages you to play multiple colours of mana, and not just one. Unfortunately, for constructed playability, this card isn't quite there, and it's just completely overshadowed by Read the Bones. Read the Bones, for instance, doesn't punish you for only having 2 colours of mana. Read the Bones also digs you far deeper into your deck than even a max paid Painful Truths does. Painful Truths does draw you 3 cards when you pay 3 different colours of mana, but Read the Bones can theoretically dig to 4 cards deep, and get rid of trash you don't want. You have to always remember this, ladies and gentlemen, that any card you draw that is not really that useful, okay, it stops you during that next turn or the turn after, but it still has no real immediate impact on the game, and Read the Bones completely does. Whenever you scry and keep to the top, enemies hate seeing what you drew. Anytime you scry and put to the bottom, that's almost as if you drew that card, except it's not stuck in your hand, and you're actually drawing good cards instead, which I really like. So I think Read the Bones is just a simply better card than Painful Truths in Constructed, and it stays in Standard, which is great because it was printed in Magic Origins, for those of you who think it was going to rotate with Theros, because it is a Theros card. So it's nice to see that stay around and simply make Painful Truths look bad. That's not to say Painful Truths is a bad card, it's just overshadowed by a common, and it's sad to see a rare completely overshadowed like this. It seems to be that way with a lot of the rares in this format, actually, before I move on to the next card, that the commons and uncommons seem to be slightly better than a lot of the rares, and it's making people wish they hadn't pre-ordered booster boxes. That's not to say we won't see any more good rares. We've still got 20 or so rares or whatever mythics combined to get, and so we're probably going to see a good 1 or 2 here and there that maybe make the set worth it. I remember when Khans was spoiled, people had the same reaction to it, so hopefully we get a lot of good coming. But anyway, moving on to Dragon Master Outcast. Red wants a single red mana for a 1/1 human shaman mythic rare creature. This is a complete reprint, by the way, and it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, put a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. This card is interesting, and I can see this being constructed playable. It being a 1/1 is virtually irrelevant overall. 1 toughness is not much different to 2 toughness in the current format. It's not quite as big as the gulf between 2 and 3. So the 1 toughness doesn't matter. And the 1 power, while not amazing, well, you're really playing this just for the 5/5 dragons you get every turn. I believe this was originally part of a cycle in the original Zendikar block with cards like Scoot Mob and the like. That had, when you ever, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you controlled a certain amount of lands, get an effect. As I say, this card could see playing constructed, and it is an absolute bomb in limited, massive bomb in limited, because generally limited doesn't have that many removal spells, and normally you do have games that go on long enough to hit 6 or more lands, especially in a format like Battle for Zendikar. Or Zendikar. So this card will be a limited first pick and constructed playable if the right deck and the right shell and removal all matches up to make this card playable. Really, you have to make sure that you can either protect this card or untap with it to really get your value. So it's a really weird 1-drop that you don't want to play until turn 6 or 7. But then again, it's a 1-drop that has immediate impact the next turn, so it has to be removed, and you can play it with enough mana to protect it or protect your other stuff. So it's an interesting 7-drop in some respects that just has a lot of impact while having a lot of mana spare. A good card, actually, I think, overall. Next up, we have Crumble to Dust. 3 in a red for a uncommon sorcery with Devoid, and exile target non-basic land, search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that land, and exile them. Then that player shuffles his or her library. This card is very, very similar to, I think, Sowing Salt, which was a 2 red sorcery. They both exile a land and both exile non-basic lands and all lands with the same name from the hand, graveyard, or library. I think this card is very useful, especially with man lands being reprinted. Especially with the hexproof one, you're going to need ways to answer them while they're lands, and this is just a way for at least red decks to be able to answer them. I'm not certain if any other deck, though, will have an answer to them. Maybe they'll print a card like Ghost Quarter or Tectonic Edge in the set. But a card like this appearing definitely shows they appreciate the power of the lands in this set. There is a lot of them, and even though we've already seen one whole cycle of 5 in this set, and another cycle of 5 split over 2 in this set and 3 in the next set, there is also, in an article today, announced a second set of 5 lands, which I think in Battle for Zendikar. So we're definitely going to see a good use out of a card like Crumble to Dust and any other cards like it. At the very least, if it's not mainboardable, it's going to be sideboardable. It's colourless with Devoid, so it combines really well with any of the colour synergy in the set, like Herald of Kozilek. It also combines really well with Oblivion Sower, because by exiling, like, say, 3 or 4 lands from their library in total, you get to exile that and then bring them all into play with Oblivion Sower and any lands Oblivion Sower hits, so that's very good. Next up, we have Noyan Dar Royal Shaper. 3 white blue for a 4/4 legendary creature Merfolk ally at rare. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, you may put 3 1/1 counters on target land you control. If you do, that land becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste that's still a land. Now, the first time I looked at this card, I thought it looked kind of meh. Even as a commander, I can't imagine a blue-white commander deck that wants to expose all its land to removal, like board sweepers and single target removal. It's not really something you wanted to do. But closer inspection gave me this realization. You can dump all of these counters onto a single land repeatedly and just make one massive threat, or split them up against a deck where you know they have no real way of dealing with them and create loads of little threats. Perfect in decks like Control or mid-range decks like Jeskai mid-range, where you want to create loads of threats in the mid to late game and just overpower your enemy with your superior spells. Turning any removal or counter spell in your deck into a threat at the same time is always good, or a way to empower your threat again is insane. The fact that this also combines with Jeskai's Ascendancy by animating loads of lands and turning them into creatures that untap with Jeskai's Ascendancy and tap for mana is also going to be fun, and I can definitely see players out there planning on doing that already. It's already easy to fuel cards like Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time with Jeskai's Ascendancy, but being able to generate enough mana from tapping lands to effectively go infinite with a huge amount of draw spells is incredibly good, and I can't wait to see this card see some play. Maybe not as more than a 2 of, but I can see it replacing certain numbers of Dragonlord Ojutai in certain decks, depending on how the players want to build their decks. It also combines really well with the new Awakened board wipe, so this may be another reason for control decks to start running that board wipe instead of the other 2 5-mana white board wipes we currently have in the format. Interesting to note, by the way, this guy is the guy from, I believe, Spell Snare, or the other 1-mana counterspell that has a Merfolk on it. I think, or at least it has his flavor text on it, so that's interesting to see. And actually, like the flavor, he went from being a counter mage to someone trying to quell the land to someone embracing the land's fury, because I guess Nis has told them all about the fact that the land is trying to help them. So that's quite cool. Just want to bring back a little bit, actually, a second. I did say his card, I think, could replace Ojutai. Again, that really depends on the format. Obviously, there is the downside of it not having hexproof, and Ojutai being this big evasive flyer with hexproof being great. And you have Ojutai always gets to hit before your opponent can cast Ruinous Path, because he's got hexproof the first time they can cast it. So that's always good. But you should never underestimate against certain opponents the ability to just turn any instant or sorcery into a threat or improving threats. So this is a card I think will see some play. I think at least there'll be some play testing. I think people saying this card is terrible, like I did at first glance, need to reevaluate this card. It can be very powerful in the right shell. especially if we get given a 1 mana cantrip. This card can be pretty ridiculous. Even then, we already have cards like Anticipate to make this card even more powerful than we would otherwise want it to be. Fits perfect to Jeskai Shell as well, eliminating your opponent's creatures with burn spells, and then adding more creatures to the board, or combining this with Monastery Mentor to just make a ridiculous deck of generate loads and loads of threats. Can be pretty cool. Next up, we have Endless One. A X mana cost creature Eldrazi for a 0/0 rare creature enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it. I think this is the first X/0/0 creature with 1/1 counters we've ever had. The most recent, I guess, closest version to this we'd see is Hangerback Walker. And already there are people trying to brew with this, in Modern at least, decks where you can play 0 mana and have the creature die and come back again. But I don't know why they wouldn't have already brewed that with Hangerback Walker. As a rare, I think this card could have been an uncommon or common, but unfortunately the limited format dictates this being a rare. It's a colorless Eldrazi card which synergizes with the Eldrazi decks, that's playable in the early game, and always good. It is as powerful as you have mana, which makes it always good in limited. And at uncommon, it would probably appear far too much that any deck would have them. Like, any deck can pick this guy up because he's colorless and he's always on curve. He's never ahead or below curve when you've got the mana to play him. So that makes him a great limited card, at least, if not constructed playable. But in certain Eldrazi decks, again, this could be constructed playable as well. Like I say, it hits the curve, it allows you to play something early, which Eldrazi decks would love. Theoretically, he's 0 mana 2/2 in Modern, by the way, with Eye of Ugin, that reduces the mana cost of all Eldrazi by 2. Colorless Eldrazi, sorry, by 2. So that's quite funny. That if you play that turn 1, you start with as many 0 mana 2/2s as you have in your hand, which actually could be fairly playable in Modern, but unfortunately ain't going to make a deck like Affinity anytime soon, which I guess is good because Affinity is nuts and crazy and bonkers. Well, next up we have the first of our 2 rare lands that have been spoilt today, Ally Encampment. Taps to add 1 mana to your color of just 1 colorless mana to your pool, or tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool and spend this only to cast an ally spell. This card is interesting, and it does have another line of text, but I'm just going to talk about the first 2 lines of text. So it's a generic colorless land, and it can add 1 mana to your mana pool for any color to cast an ally spell. Already, this is reminding me a lot of the recent Haven of the Spirit Dragon printing, which basically did a similar thing, colorless or color for any dragon. But that one actually said dragon creature. This says any ally spell, which means it can be used to cast any of the shape-shifting spells in Modern, which is quite cool, or any of the tribal shape-shifting instants and sorceries, which again means it can cast Nameless Inversion or Crib Swap, and I think those are the only 2 that I've seen. There might be others, but no, this card is pretty interesting at just that text. If it just had that text, it'd be super playable in an ally deck. But it also has pay 1, sacrifice ally encampment, and return an ally you control to its owner's hand. So, like the Haven, it has a way to recur your allies. But unlike Haven, it works around the fact that allies are all about enter the battlefield effects, and allows you to bounce 1 at any time. Slightly better than Haven in some respects, because if you really need to bounce an ally just to be able to play it again next turn to win the game, you can do so. Whereas with Haven, you have to wait for a creature to die before you get any value back. So this can be used earlier. This can also be used to save an ally from a removal spell, which sometimes is better than Haven. Being able to counter a removal spell in some respects, especially if it only has that 1 instant of target on it, is pretty good. I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but hey, if someone goes for return an ally to your a certain ally to your hand and draw a card with Cryptic Command, you can counter it. So there's that going for it, I guess. Solid card, definitely playable. In any format with allies playable. Unfortunately, that means we have to wait for some playable allies, or at least really powerful allies, to see play in Standard for this card to show up much. And the final card today, and the second of our rare lands spoilt today, is Sanctum of Ugin. Just a generic rare land that can tap to add 1 colourless mana to your pool. However, it also has a trigger on it that says whenever you cast a colourless spell with converted mana cost 7 or greater, you may sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin. If you do, search your library for a colourless creature card, reveal it and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Basically what this says is, when you cast Ugin, or any big Eldrazi spell, search for another big Eldrazi spell. And I know there are people that are saying this is win more, but that's completely not the case. This is ensuring a win. Not winning more, but ensuring a win. On the basis that it's win more, any creature like Genesis Hydra should be considered win more, but they're not. A lot of their power is considered from the fact that they help you secure a win. And tutoring a second threat or a follow-up when you cast a card like Ugin or something like that is really cool. Or the fact that you can cast a what's he called, Ulamog, and tutor up another Ulamog to put into your hand straight after, meaning that if they get rid of the first, they still have to deal with a second, is pretty powerful. I really like that in effect. It's a really cool card. Both of these lands actually will see play, I think, at some point in the standard season, no matter how much people poo-poo them. Sanctum of Ugin, I think, is actually more playable than Ally Encampment, because Sanctum of Ugin seems to have more support in playables at the moment, but it really depends on how many good allies they print. That said, I do prefer the art on Ally Encampment. Sanctum of Ugin seems to have the generic Ugin land art, which is kind of dull and boring. But anyway, yes, that's the spoilers for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed all these cards. I delayed a bit in the day to bring you this video on the basis I knew some more spoilers will hopefully happen during the day. So that's quite good to see. That waiting paid off. So yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be continuing to do spoilers for the rest of the week, as well as a few other videos here and there. So hopefully you will subscribe if you want to see any of them. Don't forget to like and share my videos, and I will see you next time.